Wow. That's wild. Thanks for sharing, Rhonda.
I'll share real quick. Deborah Taylor, post-COVID, I would be done coughing because I have COVID right now.
Oh, goodness.
I tested positive on Monday and again on Tuesday. Two different kinds of tests. And I'm good if I don't inhale. That sounds like some presidential comment. Um,
She still has her sense of humor.
Deep inhaling causes me to cough. So
Oh,
I would be after COVID happy anywhere, and I'll go back on mute.
well, thanks for sharing, Deborah, and I hope you get well soon.
Did everyone else go?
Nope, but you're talking, so you're going.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I hopped on late. I was working. Good excuse, right? I'm Liana. I already know Ren and Russell. I am the Sierra Club volunteer for the Denver Beyond Coal team. And so I was one of the people that requested that we have these advocacy training workshops. So I'm really grateful that you're going to share some of your expertise with us. I think it's really crucial to our work that we feel equipped and empowered to learn from you guys how to support the work of the Sierra Club, but also do that work in our own space and know kind of what tactics are involved with that. So our icebreaker is if you could be anywhere in the world post COVID-19. Where I love Colorado, and I feel very fortunate to be in a place where it's not so densely packed and we've access to outdoors and can socially distance and all those things. But I'm really, really missing my family, and my dad and stepmom live in Maui. So fortunately or unfortunately, they've been isolated there for a very long time. So I would go to Maui for sure and get a little relaxation if I could. So that's it.
That sounds awesome. Thank you so much, and nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you. It's great to see you.
I can share next. So yeah, hi. To those of you that I know, and for those of you that I haven't met, I'm Ren Smith. My pronouns are he, him, and they, them. I'm also an organizer with Sierra Club. And man, if I could be anywhere in the world post COVID-19. Well, my partner and I were supposed to go on a vacation for New Year's, which has been postponed. So, which I feel grateful because it's a very privileged problem to have. Like, oh rats, my vacation got canceled. But yeah, nonetheless, a little bit sad about that. I really like going to the movie theaters. I miss going to the movies. So yeah, something like that next year, maybe. And yeah, I wanted to thank Liana and Russ and all the other Beyond Coal volunteers for helping to come up with the idea for this series. I think it's been really fun and I'm really excited about it. So yeah, big shout out to y'all for helping make this happen.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ren.
Hey, so this is Alexis. I'm an organizer with the Denver, Colorado chapter. And if I could be anywhere in the world, I would be in South America eating coconuts and learning Spanish. That's my fantasy. That's where I'd be.
Love it. That's awesome. Sarah, she, her, I would go to Thailand. Really want to go there. Just think it looks beautiful and the food's delicious. So I hope to get there one day. Thank you all for sharing. Excited to learn a little bit about y'all and excited to continue the conversation as we go forward. This is going to be our agenda. This is going to be what we're covering today. So please feel free to use the chat box at any time to interact with other attendees. Since I am sharing my screen right now, it's hard for me to see what's happening in the chat box. So if you have questions about anything we covered, we have a Q&A section kind of at the end, and just kindly ask that you have questions there, or if Ren or Alexis, not to put you on the spot, but you could help answer any other questions, that would be fantastic. Just housekeeping. And Liana, since you jumped in a little bit late, a heads up, we're recording this session. So just a heads up there.
I'll be on my best behavior.
You do you. Just know other people might watch it down the road. Okay, so the first thing we're going to touch on is recruitment. And I like to think about recruitment in two different ways. I think of mass recruitments and one-on-one recruitment. There's a saying that I've heard that I really like and identify with, and it's, if you don't focus on recruitment and leadership development now, your organization or team won't exist in 2 years. I think oftentimes it's so easy to get busy with our campaigns, our different teams, everything else that's happening in our lives, that we forget to recruit and get more people involved in our organization. And the way I think about this is two different kinds. Like I said, so we have mass recruitment that's really focusing on recruiting a lot of people really quick. Typically, this is for an action or a specific event that's coming up. I think about this in terms of when we throw rallies at the Capitol, when we can be in person, or we need a really urgent online action or petition to get a lot of traction really quickly to make a statement. Mass recruitment's typically the tactic that we use. It's also helpful for petition signers, educational events that we want to, teach people about something really quickly, welcome meetings that we want to bring new folks into, fundraisers, and team meetings. There's a couple pros with mass recruitments, of course. It's time efficient. You have a lot of folks receiving information, spreads general awareness about your brand or your team effectively, and typically the tools are pretty easy to use. This is often mass text tools, email blasts, newsletters, different things like that. Some of the cons related to mass recruitment is that it can be really impersonal, harder to vet folks. So occasionally you'll get that one bad seed that'll come to your event or take place and kind of, make things a little weird. And it's easier to drop the ball on follow-up. So mass recruitment's great for getting a lot of folks involved, but sometimes it's harder to get them to stay involved when you use this approach. And then the one that we'll be spending most of our time on today is talking about one-on-one recruitment. So one-on-one recruitment is really the most effective way to understand the needs of volunteers and develop skills in becoming leaders for your organization down the road. It definitely takes a lot more time, but oftentimes is worth the wait and worth the effort that you put in. One-on-one recruitment is personal recruitment, focused on leadership development and engagement, typically with volunteers interested in specific activities or folks that have already taken action, but not always. Often uses for this is public comments, testimony for legislation, team leadership positions, story collection or storytelling, asking folks to recruit others. There's a whole lot of pros with one-on-one recruitment. It's personal, creates relationships with organizers or other volunteers. You'll get a better understanding of volunteers' interests and needs. And lastly, this is an effective way to develop leaders because you understand more about folks. One of the most prominent cons, and I would say maybe the only con here, is that it's very time consuming. So depending on where you're at in your campaign, you'll really want to think about your different recruitment tactics, whether you're at a place where you want to do mass recruitment or have a little bit more time and capacity to nurture your volunteers and do that one-on-one recruitment required to build up leaders. So who should you have a one-on-one with? This is always the question to get folks started. And the way I like to think about this is first by thinking about where your campaign is at. So are you just getting started? Are you a brand new team? Are you thinking about starting a team? Is this a new idea that you're just coming up with? Or have folks already been taking actions? So say you have folks that have already been signing petitions online, already been getting involved in some community events, have been involved minimally maybe, but haven't really gotten to the next step. Or have you had volunteers that have been asked to take on an additional action or a role or shown enthusiasm and readiness, but just need to identify opportunities for them to do more? Those are all different places where you could utilize a one-on-one conversation and set it up. So for new campaigns, typically you'll use your one-on-ones to build your list of leaders and potential leaders. So you might start from scratch with a small list of names of Sierra Club members and then work it out from there. You can start to ask folks in the community who you should talk to next. That's usually the best tactic I take, is the refer a friend. You know, the environmental community in Colorado is big, but oftentimes and throughout time, we all end up knowing each other. So the best person to identify volunteers for you might be one of your volunteers themselves or somebody in another organization. One-on-ones are also incredibly important for existing leaders. These could be people who have already taken a number of actions, folks that have shown up in person for events, or somebody who's ready to move up the leadership ladder and might be willing and anxious to take on more responsibility. That could be leading a group, that could be facilitating a conversation, being awesome like Liana and thinking about hosting trainings. I mean, there's a whole lot of things, or like Rhonda, leading phone banks and calling 90,000 people. Those are great examples of existing leaders that stepped up to take on more. And maybe if you just have more conversations with folks, they might be willing to do more in a campaign than you would initially guess. The other folks that I encourage people to have one-on-ones with are partner organizations. It's often one of the things that get missed when we're thinking about recruiting, is reaching out to some of the folks that we're already working directly with. Partner organizations can be organizations that share your values. They don't always have to be environmental. I actually encourage folks to think broader than environmental organizations when they're wanting folks to get involved. A lot of young people are active within social justice organizations and also care about the environment, and it could be interesting to start some partnerships or gain some new leaders and volunteers from doing outreach there. So now that we know who we should have a one-on-one with, we're going to move to the actual how. And I know a lot of this seems a little bit of duh, but we're going to start with basics, and then I'm going to have everybody test it out with each other. But first, let's think about the person that you want to meet, and then identify 2 or 3 things you want to learn from them. You have an idea, I want to meet with Ren. I want to know 3 things about what Ren's doing, where Ren comes from, and why Ren cares about Sierra Club. Second, let's plan logistics. Where or how would be a good place for us to meet? Typically, I would encourage folks to always do face-to-face one-on-ones, but considering we're living in COVID-19 time, encouraging folks to, hop on Zoom, hop on Google Hangouts, really get on the phone and find opportunities to chat with folks, and maybe even have multiple phone or Zoom conversations, because folks do get tired of being in front of the computer all day. But think about the time of day and day that would work best for this person. Are they working 9 to 5? Should we be meeting them later in the day? Should we be meeting them in the morning? Can they only chat with us on weekends? Really make an effort to make yourself available with their schedule and get to know what's best for them. And then third, it's always good to set an agenda, or at least come prepared with 3 things you'd like to discuss. If it's a little bit more of a casual one-on-one, just come prepared with some things you'd like to chat about. There's nothing more awkward than that one-on-one first date of just sitting and saying, hey, I'm Sarah, this is what I like, what do you do? It's always good to think about your campaign, think about some intentions of what you'd like to learn, and be purposefully curious. I like this term because it really makes you think about what you want to learn about a person. Where did they come from? Why are they here? Why do they care about Sierra Club? Why do they want to get involved? What are their next steps? What do they want to do in 5 years? What are all these different things that you'd like to know about this person to really figure out why they should get involved? My cat wants to get involved. Okay, and then lastly, you want to have the meeting, of course. So come with some materials on your campaign. If you have a pamphlet, if you have a fact sheet, if you have something about your cause or whatever you're pushing, bring those materials with you. Lead with that intentional curiosity. Figure out where they're coming from. Figure out why they want to talk to you, why they're even making time to talk to you, and what they want to learn about whatever issue it might be. Make sure to be vulnerable. Tell your story. Tell them where you're coming from, so it's not just you prying them for questions, but they also know that they can trust you and learn where you're coming from as well. And then tailor the ask to what they're interested in. Of course, this is kind of basic common knowledge, but at the end, you really want to figure out, okay, I met with this person, I figured out all these things about them. What is the ask, or what is the next step that we can do to get this person involved in a meaningful way to really make sure that they're growing as a leader for Sierra Club or whatever your cause might be. You want to plan and commit to next steps. So if this is a person that you think would be a good fit for your team, not all of your one-on-ones might be that, and that's okay. Really make sure to plan and commit to what those next steps might be. Are you going to have another phone call with them in a week? Are they going to be invited to attend your team meeting? Are they going to sign a petition or join a group on Facebook that you're promoting? What is that next step? And make it clear when you're having a discussion with them what that is. And then last but not least, take notes. I've made this mistake so many times where I've gone into a one-on-one with somebody and really just gotten to the point where we're having a fantastic conversation, really bonding about something. And then I realized I didn't write down anything. I really wanted to capture this conversation. And in a couple weeks, I don't even remember what day we talked about. I didn't remember our next steps. I didn't have anything to bring from it. So just make sure to take those notes so you can capture the interests of this person and really figure out your next steps on follow-up. Okay. Now we're going to go into our practice session. So each of you is going to have 30 minutes with your partner. I'm going to pair you up randomly with somebody in your group, and we're all going to practice our one-on-ones. We're going to have one person that's designated as a Sierra Club leader and one person that's the organizer. We want the organizer to tell the leader about yourself, how you ended up organizing, and write down what you've learned from the conversation with them. And as the Sierra Club leader, we'd like you to tell the story of your journey to Sierra Club leadership, focusing on a couple points of interest to you. And then you'll spend 5 minutes at the end reflecting on what you've learned together and commit to that next step. What's the next thing you're going to do? A couple of goals of this conversation is going to be to identify the interests that you will share, opportunities for collaboration, and unique traits or interests about that person that you might not have known when you went into it. So I'm going to break you all up in breakout groups. You'll each have a partner. We'll get to practice this for a half hour. I'm going to have you take turns. So the first 15 minutes, you'll be either the organizer or the Sierra Club leader. And then in the additional 15 minutes, you'll swap and trade places with that person.
Can I ask, I have a question, and then I also just have a few thoughts and comments on what you're saying. So I love what you said about the intentional curiosity, and also how, so I work in fundraising as my day job, and not like the icky kind. I just want to say that first of all. But the framework that we use is it's all donor centric, right? We're focused on that other person. It's not about us. It's not about how much we want to share about our work, so we do. It's where do they fit in? Where do they see themselves? And based on what they bring to the table, right? What are they already interested in? How do we get to know them? What do they want to commit? What sparks passion for them about what we do? And that's the form that we use to connect. So I love what you said about that. And then just that intentional curiosity, like digging deeper, asking about them, and not coming into it. Like I love that you said, prepare, an agenda so that you do have expectations about that conversation, but also not being married to an outcome, and really allowing it to develop organically. I think that's the way to like develop relationships and connect with people. And based on what you said, so my volunteer recruitment experience was Anna McDevitt. I don't know if you know her, but I reached out to her because I love the Sierra Club and wanted to figure out if there's a way that I could get involved, because the environmental nonprofit area was not one that was my career anymore, but I still wanted to do that in my free time. And so she took me to coffee and we sat down and had just this sort of conversation. And I told her what my interests were and my skill set and the things that I was excited about. She told me what the Beyond Coal campaign group was working on. And I felt like she really was invested in not just getting me to do something, but getting me energized about participation. And that's something that has kept me committed to working with our team, even as it changes, even as people come and go. And so I think that one-on-one focus was very meaningful to me at the beginning. So I love all of the things that you said about that. And then on the partnerships area, I was curious because you made such a good point about not just being environmental organizations that you're thinking about, particularly now when there's such an overlap between environmental justice and inequities in our society and all of these sorts of things, that you'll find a lot of unusual, wonderful potential partnership opportunities. So I'm kind of wondering, like a lot of people still do have historical misconceptions about what the Sierra Club does and view it as a white elitist environmental organization. So I'm wondering if later, like you might be able to speak a bit about, a toolkit for one-on-one recruitments or partnership where you're really able to lay out what the Sierra Club is currently focused on and moving toward, and what that vision looks like, rather than, whatever ideas folks might have in their head that might prevent them from wanting to form an alliance with you at the organizational level. And my question, and I'm throwing a lot out there, is how might these one-on-one tactics and strategies depending on your role? So like for me, I want to recruit other volunteers, but I'm a volunteer. Right. I'm not a Sierra Club leader. So, how, I know one thing that's been particularly effective is me sharing my experience as a volunteer with other people who might be interested based on an event they attended or a list that we have. But I'm wondering if that conversation looks a bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when I created this presentation, I wanted it to be broad because I imagined that we would have folks from a lot of different places coming here. Like we would have volunteers that might be recruiting other volunteers. We might have, staff that are working on varying different campaigns. I know Ren works on Beyond Coal, Alexis leads our political, and I do internal organizing. So I'm looking for the leaders that want to step up and do groups and all these different things. So we have definitely room for tweaking in any way, shape, or form what that might be. I think a one-on-one conversation for fundraising might look a little bit different than a one-on-one conversation for a leader that's going to, lead a group. So definitely know that this model can be open to, change for whatever your conversation is going to be, and definitely, consider that ahead of time and just think about that outcome that you're hoping to gain and where Sierra Club might be. I know I've had a lot of conversations with, partner organizations that definitely do have that perception of Sierra Club being, a elite, predominantly white male organization, and having that conversation is important. First step sometimes. So know your audience. I don't know if that answers it, but I think that's just key to all of these is really being intentional about how you're approaching a one-on-one, taking the time to think about what you want to get out of it and what you want to learn about the other person. Okie doke. Well, I'm going to break us up into groups now. Have one person be the organizer, one person be the Sierra Club leader, and then we'll do a short report out. So 30 minutes. I think that we should have an even number, but if not, one of y'all gets me.
I think Rhonda's rebooting. And there's somebody else new on too. Is that Corinne on iPhone?
Oh no, the iPhone is my cell phone. I was testing
Oh.
it to make sure my screen looked right when I was doing
Okay.
this.
Thank you for letting me interrupt. I wasn't really sure if I was supposed to ask questions like that.
No, you're good. That was perfect. Okay. Here we go. All right, so room should be open. I'll see y'all soon.
Sorry, I got booted off.
Hey, Rhonda, no problem. I'm going to put you in a breakout room with Alexis to practice the one-on-ones.
Okay.
All right, here you go.
And as many, you talked a little bit about the note taking and being specific, and that shows people that you really listened and you really heard them and are trying to understand and really invested in finding a good match. So we talked about, sending at least, like, if you don't have all the stuff ready for a full follow-up, like if you offered to connect them with other people or resources or events, just send them a quick little thank you and be like, it was so nice to learn a little bit more about you and your interest in Sierra Club, and hopefully we'll be able to find an opportunity for you. I just wanted to let you know I'm working on it, and you can look out for some next steps from me within the next couple weeks or something. So we thought that would be an important thing to discuss while the iron is hot. And something that Ren just said too. Oh, this is a comment / question. I'm sorry, Ren probably told you already that I over participate. So I usually have a comment or a question. Oh my goodness, what was I gonna say? So even though these one-on-ones should be focused on the person, the recruitee or potential volunteer or partner, I was wondering what your thoughts are on also creating a comfortable environment by relating your experience to them. So saying, I started off, on that end of the table, and my interests were blah, 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 blah. And then I did this, this, and this. So as long as you're leaving tons of space for them, but still not making it feel like an interview, if that kind of makes sense. And something that Russell and I did, because we didn't have the slides, and so we couldn't remember everything that we were really supposed to do in the model of the conversation, but we made sure to touch on, feel the person who was not the leader out in terms of what they were looking for in time commitment, in skills. And then something we added was what wasn't necessarily in their wheelhouse, but they wanted to learn more about, whether that was a skill like political comment submission or engagement or campaigning, or whether that was something like event organization or understanding legislation or graphic design, anything that they thought they might be able to get out of this that they didn't have experience with.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really, really great point in thinking about those learning opportunities and, why folks are coming to volunteer. I think a lot of folks come to Sierra Club because we have a lot of opportunities for folks to get involved in the environmental movement. And this is a first in and maybe a career path for folks to really want to know, I want to learn more about the legislative process because I want to go work for somebody down the road, or I want to go do this. And this is an opportunity for me to do that. In terms of the sharing about each other, I think that's so important. What I found from me and Rhonda's conversations, we have a lot in common. We both come from a social justice background. We both have done LGBTQ organizing, which is something I definitely wouldn't have guessed with Rhonda. That's awesome. I'm so stoked to hear that. We both come to Sierra Club from a background of really focusing on those things. And Sierra Club kind of happened a little bit by accident for both of us. And now Rhonda is really interested and really involved in the wolf issue and thinks about social justice in that way, and protecting the wolves as a social justice issue, which I think is fantastic.
I will add, I love talking with you, Sarah. And at first I was starting to feel like, no, everything that you believe in is what I believe in. And yet you're doing it in this way and I'm doing it in this way. It was like the things that you care about the most in life, your LGBTQ community and racial justice, you come to those things and they're very important to you. And you're so lucky that you get to have a job where, because those issues are so important and some of the things that affect the communities that you love are affected by the climate injustice and like people living on I-70 that are the most affected by, Suncor and those places, you want to make sure that they can have a seat at the table when we're talking about issues that affect them. And I totally believe too, when anybody has a questionnaire, what is the most important thing to me and what am I the most worried about? It is our global climate change. And then I often, and a racial justice is a core to my being. And I'm like, how did I get to wolves from all of this? And it is because when I became a wolf researcher after being a home health and hospice nurse, caring for the underserved and working at Sisters of Color, caring for women with HIV and AIDS, I've figured out I've always cared for the underdog or the underwolf. And when I started to work with the wolf restoration and spent the last 2 years reading about how unjustly their lives have been, and the old myth of the big bad wolf is so wrong, and how our system in Colorado, where since the 1800s, ranchers got the ear of the wildlife services, and they decided that they wanted the wildlife services to kill every single wild animal in Colorado. So they killed off all the bison and they killed off all the wolves by 1945. And it's unjust the way the wildlife services is connected to the ranching community in Colorado. And I aim to change that.
Power to you, Rhonda. Let's do it. Anybody else want to share something they learned from their one-on-one? Oh, Russ, go ahead.
Yeah, so there was something Liana did to start that then I copied because it was awesome, and I never would have thought of it. Which is, I'm used to always checking in, hey, is now a good time, but checking in if are they in the right headspace? Like, we set this up, do I need to hold space for you to vent about something, or just like I said, checking to see if they're still in the right mental place to talk about it, or like, okay, is this coffee going to turn into a quick we're going to be friends really fast because you need to talk about something.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's good.
Thank you for the shout out. That was so nice. That's something that I've learned in the virtual meeting space that we're in right now, is I usually don't know the context of what I'm stepping into in people's worlds. And especially in the case that in our hypothetical, we pretended like this was a meeting that Russell and I scheduled months ago when the world was more normal. And so He asked me, is this still a good time for you? Are you still interested? And I said, yeah, actually, like right now more than ever, I've been at home and feeling kind of disillusioned with the world. And I really want to find somewhere where I feel like I'm making a little difference. And I care about the environment tremendously. I care about all these social issues. And like, I'm probably more excited now than I was before. And it could obviously go the other way, but I think people appreciate you just checking in with them and their mental and emotional capacity to take something on.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, folks, for sharing. I want to acknowledge on that we are 10 minutes over. So thank you all for the patience, and open it up to questions. If anybody has questions about what we covered, now's a good time to chat, or feel free to bring it up.
So what is our next step, Sarah? How am I going to go to the legislature and change the world for wolves here? How am I going to do that?
First, Rhonda, we got to figure out what's going on with the legislature. I don't know if they're going to have a legislative session.
Yeah.
I don't know what things are going to look like, but we'll get there. And then I think second is, plugging you in with the legislative committee and making sure that the Wolf Coalition and the folks that work so hard to get this passed has a seat at the table and is involved in conversations there.
Thank you.
May I ask another question?
Of course.
Well, could you talk a little bit about we talked about good strategies. What are some kind of like mistakes that you've seen, or potential like have you had any bad experiences, and what have you learned from those?
That's a great question. I think something that I've learned, and to kind of backtrack, is always take notes. It's a big piece of me. I get involved with a lot of things, get really forgetful sometimes, and it's just helpful for me to be able to look back. I think, and making sure that your conversations are balanced. I've had a lot of one-on-ones, and when I first started organizing, really just diving straight into the questions. It felt a lot more like an interview than a natural conversation with somebody. And just make sure that you're kind of paying attention to that back and forth. It becomes really easy to, just ask a ton of questions and kind of overwhelm folks, to either commit to something right away. Try to read where folks are at to the best of your ability. And always be able to be vulnerable. If you're asking somebody to be vulnerable and share where they're coming from, be willing to do the same thing. It's not always easy. It's something that, takes time, and developing your own story or wanting to share your own story and getting to that place. But give what you're trying to get, I think, is the best advice I have.
Can I add a little bit there?
Yeah.
Yeah, to someone's question earlier, I apologize that I forget who, about whether you should stick to mostly asking questions about the other person or whether you should share more about yourself. That's exactly why. Sharing a bit of your story and a bit of your motivations for the work that you do, and a bit of the things that you're specifically interested in working on, lays the groundwork for somebody else to feel comfortable reciprocating. And the really cool thing about that is you can model telling someone the kind of information that you want to hear back, and then they tend to mirror that. So if I wanted to know where you're from and what you do, I might tell you I'm from Los Angeles and I'm a community organizer, and then you'd be more naturally inclined to respond the same way. So it's a great way to kind of set the tone for the conversation. And yeah, in terms of things not to do, it's something that I'm learning recently, and I still want to talk to you more about this, Liana, but I think going in with a set of questions or things that you want to learn is awesome, and that's what I do. But I also think it's important to use emergent design, and by that I mean to be flexible and attentive to what somebody wants to talk about and what they're ready to share with you. And this is, I think, doubly important doing work in environmental justice communities, doing work with folks that represent traditionally marginalized identities. It's really important to, like, I've had one-on-ones where I went in and I was like, I'm going to ask this person about this and this and this issue. And then it turned into like 45 minutes of me listening to them talk about like why they don't trust organizations like Sierra Club, and like that the smaller organizations that they're working with like need help. And like, that's valid information too. And that informs my organizing too. So I think it's just important to like show up with vulnerability and humility, and like let people know that you're grateful for whatever information they want to share, and just kind of trust that like you'll get there with them. Like you'll get to ask the questions that you want to, but sometimes it takes more time to build that relationship with someone, and that's okay. That's good, actually.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments folks would like to share?
That was my late to find applause for Ren and Leanna. Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, and Ren, that really helped me to set the tone that you're speaking about, setting the tone up about sharing something about yourself that you want them to share. That helps me a lot. So thanks.
Yeah, it's I think a skill that comes a little bit from one of the things that we discovered in our one-on-one time, me and Deborah, is that we both have backgrounds in canvassing. And going door to door and having conversations like that, it's very important to kind of like model the way you want to speak and be spoken to, and like set the tone for the conversation early on, establish like that you're there to talk about X, so yeah, I think coming in with like that clear state of mind is really helpful for me.
When Ren says that, I'll just add a note about Deborah and I did the phone banking, and as a retired nurse during COVID, we spoke to, and a lot of people don't answer the phone, thousands of seniors that were lonely. And we were like kitchen table wisdom, not just asking them to vote yes on 114, talking about wildlife, and seniors that cared about wildlife. And, when I would say I was a retired nurse, a lot of times people would say, my toe hurts, or, but just conversations. But we had so much kitchen table wisdom because some people don't answer the phone, but there's a lot of lonely people. And I think some of those senior conversations we had pulled us into a bear win.
Absolutely.
You might talk about things you didn't think you were going to talk about.
Yeah. Every single person, even people that you would meet in very unexpected circumstances, is very, very important to building the kind of movements that we want to build. Yeah, that makes me very nostalgic thinking about those kind of conversations where you end up talking to some sweet old grandma for an hour. Oh man, yeah.
We had a lot of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I were to add one more thought, it's something that Russell and I did. I think it's important to ask what things people do not want to do. Because like for me, I work in fundraising and I don't actually want to do that for my volunteer work. Like and I am on the phone all day with people having conversations like that. And it's my job to listen to whatever is going on in their day and like hear the stories of all the old lonely people who are sitting at home now. That's great, but that's actually not what I want to do with my spare time, because it's what I do professionally. The other things is like I have a keen interest in political engagement and motivating action, but what actually gets me fired up about the Sierra Club work is the educational Sierra Club work. So hosting webinars and producing fact sheets for people. I don't actually want to do a lot of canvassing. I don't want to write a lot of like communications to our political, leaders, even though maybe I should. But like letting people have a space to say, that's not the kind of thing that I want to do with my volunteer work.
Mm-hmm.
Liana, I'm just curious. What would be exciting volunteer work for you for the environment? Yeah.
I love research and I love producing communications materials and collateral. I really like engaging with people. So some sort of research that is then synthesizing, distilling, producing educational materials for people, but also doing outreach to people. Like I don't mind like texting people or having like real conversations with people or real meetings. And just trying to get to know people and inform people. Particularly what I like the idea of and what I'm compelled by is right now, the public health, especially consequences of a lot of environmental issues that are going on, and putting the knowledge in the hands of people who are most affected by it and kind of losing the most from it, and figuring out how we surpass challenges like language. A lot of policy and legislation, something that Ren and I talked to a lot about is like not in Spanish as well, or, public comments aren't available except for submitting online. What if you don't have internet access? So just like getting people to know how like coal plant pollution, for example, is affecting them and their children's health and what they can do to prevent it short term if like the legislative and legal piece isn't going to be settled right away. So things like that. That's what I would say, Deborah. But as Ren can also tell you, I will do anything. Like, I don't care. I'm like a yes person. Wherever the need is really where I want to be used. It's not about what I want to do. It's about what I can do. And I'm at least like 25% really excited about.
You're a star. And yeah, this is just like the conversation that we had during our first one-on-one. Like we talked about like the kind of work that Liana likes to do with our Beyond Coal volunteer team and what kinds of things she's excited about. And that was excellent modeling for how to ask an elicitive question during a one-on-one, I thought, Deborah, because yeah, like the way you phrased it, you asked what kind of work would be exciting for you to do as a volunteer versus like, what do you want to do as a volunteer? Like that phrasing and like, putting emotions first, definitely like that prompts the kind of answer that Liana gave. That's detailed and thoughtful like that. So I don't know if you meant to practice in front of the group like that, but you totally just
Yeah,
did.
no, that was a great way to frame it. It did translate to my response being quite different.
Crushed it. All right. Well,
I have one more question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Russell, what's the pictures?
That is
Ellie.
that is a litter of Mexican gray wolves.
Awesome.
Back in San Diego, I used to volunteer for the California Wolf Center, and I still get their updates. And this past spring, they had at least 7, it might have been 14 Mexican gray wolf pups. And they're part of the cross fostering program with Fish and Wildlife. So they do a lot for the species survival plan. And they included that picture in one of the emails.
Yep. And have you been to the any of the wolf sanctuaries here in Colorado?
I have not. I moved. So let's see. I moved here in December. My partner joined in January. So it's approaching a year. Actually, wait. I have been here a year officially. So we were here like 3 months and COVID happened. I was still trying to figure out where was a sanctuary that was close enough that I could go regularly. And then everything shut down.
Where do you live right now?
Denver Metro.
Denver Metro. Well, exactly 2 hours from Denver Metro. If you go down I-25 and get off at Highway 24 and go up over Manitou Springs and up through Woodland Park into the city of town, Two Lights town of Divide, in 2 hours, you can be at the Wolf and Wildlife Center.
And Deb and I highly recommend that you go there because
We highly.
Darlene Kabobo was created 107, which became Proposition 114. And she has the best wolf sanctuary in Colorado.
Yeah, she does.
I am excited to go and scope all of them out, to be honest.
We could give you a good tour of that place.
If you go on a day that you know it's going to be maybe high 50s, 60s in Denver, and you can count on it to probably be about 10 degrees cooler up there. It's a great outing, and I would just recommend you think about it. So it's a good day out.
Yeah, and I mean, that's actually how we found the California Wolf Center down in Julian, technically, but the San Diego area is because I was searching around for something to do for us on Black Friday, and like the first year I moved to San Diego, and found it, and then started eventually volunteering there. Is the one you're talking about? There's one of the wolf centers further west has 2 Mexican gray wolves that were actually from the California Wolf Center.
She does.
Yeah.
And it was 3, but one
Yep.
no, not Phoenix. What was his name? One of them. There were 3 brothers, I think, and one kept escaping. So he's in Arizona, New Mexico right now.
He got hurt. He escaped and he got hit by a car and hurt his leg. And so he's at another place, but Darlene is one of the only ones that is certified to do that in the state. You should meet her and go to her website, because if it wasn't for Darlene, Proposition 114 wouldn't have passed.
Yeah, I hers was one of the ones I was most interested in figuring out. Is just figuring out the 2-hour drive regularly. 1 hour is what I was doing or an hour is what I did in San Diego, and that was all right for an 8-hour day. But
Well, she did have, or still has, a volunteer from Denver that goes down and just works all day once a month.
yeah, that's what I was doing in with the California Wolf Center. So I'm definitely trying to find something that I can do that with.
See these wolves back here? I got kissed by both of them.
Aww.
Aw.
What? You got kissed by wolves?
Oh yeah, you have
That's
to.
cool.
Oh, we've kissed a lot of wolves.
We've kissed a lot of wolves. Well,
You
God,
go
they're
in
adorable.
they
three
like
wolves.
to kiss.
They do.
Wow. Not the conversation I came here to have, but nonetheless, a great addition.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
This is the unique fact about somebody that you weren't expecting. Boom. All right, y'all. Well, we are closely approaching a half hour over. I really appreciate you all hanging out. Want to make sure to invite you to join us to our next advocacy workshop series that's going to be hosted by Kim Pope. She's the campaign rep for Our Wild America. Is really awesome. It's going to be on follow-up and re-engagement. So a good next step for this conversation here if you're interested. And
Are you going to send us something, or do we go somewhere and sign up?
I got you. I will send a follow-up email to everybody who attended and registered for this series with the link to this video and a sign up for our next one.
Yay, we'll be there.
Woo! All right. Well, thank you all for coming. It was great to get to know each of you a little bit better, and thanks for sharing with me, Rhonda.
I learned
Appreciate
so much. Thank you too.
Ren, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to
And I
meet you, Deborah. And you too,
appreciate all-
Rhonda.
Appreciate all your work, all of you.
Thanks so much for being here.
You too.